I just love hearing the stories from like Troy and Jesse. Don't you like hearing those types of things? It just, I don't know, it just helps bring a whole new perspective to things. And and then Troy's got this epic beard, so he could sit up here and go, duh, and I'd be like mesmerized. Right? And Jesse and I got these little baby beards, and we need to make a pact, Jesse and I, to outbeard Troy. And, right? So we in this series called Love Like That, and really what this is all about is looking at Jesus and how Jesus responded, how Jesus actually loved here in person. I know when we think about Jesus' love, we always think about the cross, and that's kind of where it stays, and we don't go beyond the surface. We don't go beyond that. And while that within itself is so jam-packed with ideas and concepts that would be very valuable for us to understand, in reality, you can't separate them from what we're about to say today. The picture and the image that you have of Jesus and how this love actually worked out, how it acted out, how he lived it out, the things that he actually did, and made such an impact upon people. People who were so far away from God were rushing to come to him, wanted to be near him, wanted to be with him. He had such an impact upon them, and the question is, why? What was it about Jesus? What is it? I mean, did he look good? Did he smell good? Like, what was it about Jesus that people would gravitate towards him? And at the end of the day, the answer is love. And the answer is how he loved them. And if we're going to have the same impact upon people, we need to have the proper vision. That is, we need to be able to see people the way Jesus saw them. We need to be able to see people the way that God sees them. The way that God sees them and the way that God sees us is he looks beyond the brokenness. He looks beyond the sin at the core of who we are, being made in the image of God person. And we need to be able to do that. Now, we understand the difficulties. And those difficulties that we have are more within us and less within the other people. We need to remember that. But it takes the proper vision of others. And with the proper vision, and this is important, the proper vision allows us to see them the way God sees them. And that's all about what we're focusing on. Like literally, when you think of someone else, what is it that you actually focus on when you think about them? When you see someone, what about them, what is it that you're focused on? See, because what we focus on not only determines who we become in this life, but what we focus on will determine the impact that we have on others. Jesus had, and it's unmistakable, right? Jesus, he had a massive impact upon people. And there were those during his day that did not like what Jesus focused on. Specifically, the Pharisees did not like the way Jesus saw people. And as a result, Jesus gained this reputation, right? They called him a glutton and a drunk, right? A friend of sinners. See, Jesus had a tendency to look at other people and see and focus on things in quite a different way than those Pharisees. That was different. And they didn't care about, they didn't care for this. And as a result, they approached Jesus the way that they did. But that didn't change Jesus, did it? See, I think sometimes we are afraid to look beyond the surface. We're afraid to focus on what we really should be focusing on when we dress and deal with other people, because we're afraid of what other people are going to say. We're afraid of what other people are going to think. How many times do we miss doing the right thing because of what is the perceived right thing in other people's minds? See, but Jesus focused on being made in the image of God people, and the honor that has, and the worthiness that we are of being loved and cared for, and receiving compassion and mercy. And as a result, he had a massive impact upon people's lives. That it's unmistakable. You can't overcome that. You can't overcome that. And the impact, the same is for us. The impact that we can have on other people's lives will be determined by what we focus on. By what we focus on. See, but the danger is for us today, just as much as it was then, to be just like the Pharisees and miss the heart of the issue. In fact, the impact that we have on people may actually tell us if we're more like Jesus or more like the Pharisees. Jesus said, right, Luke 6:44, you will know them by their fruits. What I find interesting about that is that whenever we look at that passage or we read that passage, typically we're thinking, we'll know people. We're pointing outward. But that passage is just as much for us as it is anybody else. You can know you by your fruits. You look at your own self and your own life and judge accordingly. And so the impact that we have on people may actually tell us whether or not we're more like Jesus or more like the Pharisees. And so the question for you this morning is, who are you more like? Who are you really more like? And this is important. This is extremely important because it does harm if our lives do not reflect Jesus. If our influence does not reflect Jesus. That's harmful. That's harmful. So which one? Which one? Do you realize how easy it is to be like a Pharisee? Do you realize that? Do you realize how easy and seemingly almost natural it is to be a Pharisee? Now, obviously, when we say Pharisee, we have an idea in mind of what that is, right? And I got to say this, not all Pharisees were bad. Only the ones that we know about, right? Not all Pharisees are bad. In fact, they had really good intentions. They had noble beginnings. They were well-intentioned reformers. They were trying to combat the influences of their day. Many of them were like Paul when Paul says, listen, I was very zealous for the law. And that's a good thing, right, for the law of Moses. That's a noble thing. It's an honorable thing. And in fact, it's probably one of the reasons why Jesus addressed them the way that he did, because of the positions that they held. They were leaders. They held leadership roles. They loved scriptures and they studied them diligently, John 5:39. They were even evangelistic, Matthew 23:15. They prided themselves on staying true to Moses and the prophets. But the problem was, they missed the heart of it all. They missed it. An example we have, Matthew 23:2. Jesus says, the scribes and the Pharisees, they sit on Moses' seat. Jesus acknowledged their positions, their roles. He says, so do and observe whatever they tell you, but not the works they do, for they preach but do not practice. Listen to this. They tie up heavy burdens, hard to bear burdens, and lay them on people's shoulders. But they themselves are not willing to move them with their finger. That right there is the exact opposite of the idea that's presented in Scripture of mercy. They themselves were not willing to move them with their finger. See, they miss the heart of it all. And it's possible for us to be just like them. It is possible for us to be just like this, to be zealous for reform, right? Be diligent Bible students, be evangelistic, but yet completely miss the heart of it all. See, Phariseeism sneaks up on you. Look, no one today is waking up one morning and saying, "How do I want to be a Pharisee?" In fact, that's the character you don't want to play, right? In the religious plays. That's the one nobody wants to be. Because it's such a bad, it's like Jezebel, but in a male form. Like nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to be that. So you don't wake up and just say, "Today I'm going to be a Pharisee." No. It sneaks up on you before you even realize that it has happened. And it can happen. And it does happen. And it happens when we miss the heart of it all. That is, when we have no mercy or compassion for people who are far from God. That's the picture that we have in the Gospels. See, we can do many things right in our own eyes. But when we fail to see others the way Jesus would, we are also failing to see ourselves as we really are. And it creates an us versus them mentality. And that mentality can easily and quickly just completely take over. And where group do you think that we put ourselves in? Good or the bad? Well, nobody purposely puts themselves in the bad people section, do they? Unless you sit in the back row, then that's an automatic, right? Nobody purposely puts themselves. See, that's what happens. Like we create this culture of an us versus them mentality. It is our country, by the way. I mean, it is our culture. That's the way it is. And I don't think the church is any different because, well, the church is influenced more by the culture than we like to actually admit. There's this us versus them mentality, and there's the good people, and then there's the bad people. And whether we talk about it like that or not, the concepts are there. And which category do you put yourself in? Well, we all put ourselves in the good category. And just like Pharisees, we want nothing to do with those people. But this is where Jesus butted heads with the Pharisees. This is where he butted heads with the Pharisees. Notice the example we have in Matthew chapter 9. If you'll turn to Matthew chapter 9, is where we'll be here for a short time this morning. It seems Jesus has been in the region of Galilee for about a year. And then he just walks up to this tax collector, Matthew chapter 9, verse 9, and says, "Follow me." And he does. He does. And the fact that Matthew actually does tells us that Matthew knew something about Jesus. Matthew was probably amongst the crowd of people who would follow Jesus around in his area, in his region. He's probably heard Jesus speak, probably maybe even saw some of the great things that Jesus did. But although he knew of him, Matthew had not yet left his job. He had not left his career path, which the career path made him chief among sinners, according to the religious elite. See, because his trade actually attracted the immoral, the unethical, people who were greedy, a way to make a quick buck and make a lot of it. Without any remorse, without any issue, without any compassion or any mercy. But Matthew, he gets this invitation, right? And he says yes. And he's so excited about it. You know what happens? He throws a party. And he invites all of his friends, all of his buddies come over. And in fact, verse 10 tells us many tax collectors and sinners were there. Jesus goes to a function, a social function, filled with outcasts, filled with sinners, filled with those people who are far from God, filled with the elite among the sinners. Jesus goes. In verse 11, when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" That's a valid question, is it not? Don't read this thinking, yeah, why you eat? Oh, well, they're idiots. Why would they? Of course, why wouldn't Jesus? No. That's a valid question. Why? Why would you? The answer is found within this text. But when he heard it, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick." Now, some people read into this sarcasm, etc., and it could be there, but don't do that and miss the point here. Because what Jesus is saying is legit, and he's not just trying to tear people down. He says, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick, they do," right? So go learn what this means. You want to know why I'm eating with tax collectors and sinners? Go learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. Here's the clause, for I came not to call the righteous, but sinners. See, oftentimes when we go to this, we look at this as sarcasm. See what Jesus is saying? Yeah, you think you're righteous, but you're really not. I really came to call the sinner. But we totally miss the heart of it. And what's the heart of it? I desire mercy. I desire mercy. Coming from a text where Jesus does say, which we read already, listen, they hold Moses' seat. Listen to what they say, but don't do what they do. Go learn what this means. Jesus essentially tells them to go learn what Hosea 6:6 means. Go understand this concept, which is an interesting text within itself. God tells Israel, he says, your love, it's like a morning cloud. It's like the dew that goes away early. It's so fleeting. Like, our relationship is really not a relationship. Like, you come to me when you need something and that's it. Your love is here just for a moment. It's fleeting. It's failing. It's not deeply rooted. That love does not flow. And if it did, what would you be? What would you have? What would be demonstrated? Mercy and compassion. See, because God is love. And what does he demonstrate? Mercy and compassion. You do all of these things. Sure, those could be good things. You say all this stuff, and sure, that can be good things. But when you fail to have mercy and fail to understand that that really is at the heart of it all this stuff that we think we do right doesn't profit. I think Paul makes that pretty clear in 1 Corinthians 13. Without love, none of it matters. And the key to this, the thing that they were missing themselves, mercy. See, the Pharisees were separating themselves, right? It was an us versus them mentality, and that mentality took over. But the reality was, while they thought they could do all these things that brought them closer to God, Jesus says, Mark 7:6, your hearts are far from me. Your hearts are far from God. See, they were only masking. And we do this without realizing they were only masking who they were. And they were missing a key part. And that key part was mercy. See, because they saw them that way. And they failed to see themselves in the real light. What they were missing, as Jesus points out, is mercy. Don't miss this. Matthew followed Jesus for a reason. What made him comfortable enough to throw a party for Jesus and invite all his friends, who, by the way, were still in that same profession and doing other things worthy of being referred to as tax collectors and sinners? What drew Matthew? Something made him become a disciple, and whatever it was, it made him feel safe enough to bring all his other friends around him. There's that gravitational pull. All of his immoral buddies are sitting around the table lounging and eating with Jesus. Any guess what it was that Jesus had? Any guess what Matthew experienced? The answer is found in verse 13. Mercy. Mercy. See, what you focus on, your proper vision, what you focus on when we see people, when we think of people, when we go outside of ourselves, is not only indicative of how we see ourselves, but it tells us what we're really focusing on and the impact that we're going to have on other people. And when we create this us versus them mentality, well, those people, and it's just me and God. We fail to see that the only thing that separates us is that we fall under the umbrella of grace. That's it. Is at the core? We're all sinners, and he died for this person just as much as he died for Mother Teresa or any other person that you might perceive as being much holier than you. The price was the same. Was no different. And what the world needs and what people need if they're going to see Jesus, that's the thing, that mercy is the key. It's mercy. It's mercy. As we kind of bring this back around, what do you think about when you think about mercy? See, when you see other people, and if you want to have an impact, if you're going to be the light of the world, if you can be a city on it, if this is what we're going to be, and if we're going to have an impact on the world, on people, a key element here is mercy. Our approach is flavored, is energized, and it starts with mercy. Mercy. So what do you think about when you think about mercy? What do you think about when you think about being merciful? I want you to think right now. Someone you don't like. It's okay, everybody's got somebody you would kind of drop in that category, right? Somebody you don't like. Well, maybe you won't say it that way. I just don't care to be around them. Or whatever language we use. Maybe someone you've had a run-in with, just have some negative feelings about. Think about it. Okay? Think about it. You got that person in your mind? What would it look like to be merciful to them? What would that look like? What are the accompanying thoughts that would come into your mind? If you're going to be merciful to this person that gets under your skin, is a pain in the neck, that makes you want to weep and gnash your teeth. You know, that person, you just don't want to be in the same room with them. You see them coming and you walk the other way, or you act like you didn't see them. I know, I do it too. I get it, like, right? What would it look like to be merciful to them? What are the thoughts that would be there? What would it take to overcome those stronger than eternity feelings, right? That you have to overcome in the moment. What would it look like? Like, what would you do? What could you do to demonstrate mercy? I think the answer is caught up in the word. Mercy has an old, deep, rich history, the term itself. Okay? In our English language, this word for mercy, it simply puts forth this idea of compassion, goodwill towards other people, accompanied with a desire to actually help. Okay? It's not what James says, right? When James says, hey, you know, when you see someone in need, be warm and be filled and go your way. That's not mercy. That's not mercy. It's you acknowledge the situation and you're willing to do something to help it. Now, mercy is not always demonstrated in the sense of helping someone come out of, you know, somebody who's homeless or sick or you know, is out of money or is hungry, et cetera, right? Right? It's not limited to just that realm. Okay? Mercy is a very broad thing. The people who've wronged you, the people who have hurt you, the people who have sinned against you, the people who make decisions that you disagree with, live the lifestyles that you don't agree with at all, who maybe on the opposite side of the spectrum on so many different levels. They too are worthy of your mercy. It's the picture of having compassion, working to understand. Right? It's also the idea of relieving the distress. Relieving the distress. Quite the opposite of what the Pharisees were doing. Were laying burdens upon people and not willing themselves to push it with a finger. Relieve them of the distress. It's the idea of you being in the moment, willing to relieve someone of distress. Maybe they are overly concerned about the pain that they have caused or the thing that they have done. Maybe they don't know how to make things right. Or maybe they're not even aware of it. In that moment, the things that we can do to relieve that distress is what we refer to as mercy. And coupled with all of this is this disposition to show compassion. It's the leading foot. It is the driving force. Being compassionate understanding, sympathetic, putting yourself inside the skin of another. And if you don't know what that's like, doing what it takes to understand what that is like. That's mercy. Oh, but it's not just not getting good. See, because when Jesus talks and these ideas and these concepts that are coming up, they have such a deep history and they're deeply rooted in the Hebrew language. There's these two specific words that are oftentimes translated mercy within our text. One word, I'll just quickly tell you, it has more to do with the covenant vocabulary. It's oftentimes just translated love. And it paints this picture of one's ability to able to keep alive a relationship no matter what happens. How many relationships do you not have anymore with people that you have had at one time? The ability to maintain and sustain a relationship no matter what happens. It's a covenant language. You can understand why it would be. That's just one word. But the other one, here's where it gets good. The second word in the Hebrew language, and now remember, these are the concepts, the ideas from which Jesus would be speaking, right? The culture, etc. The second word is an emotionally loaded word. It literally stands for bowels. Oftentimes, bowels of mercy is how it's translated. And it has to do with a mother's womb. Mothers. You know what it's like to carry around that baby for months on end, right? All the things that go on during that time. Connections that us guys will never, ever understand. We can't fathom why a woman would want to be pregnant, right? Think about that. There's a connection that happens there. That the closest thing us guys get is when the baby is first born and we're able to hold them, right? And then there's that emotional chemical release. It's also a term that deals with the tenderness of a father to his children. You know what that's like. Okay, maybe your relationships haven't been the best, but you get the concept. It's also a word that's oftentimes used to indicate the love and the bond between a brother and a sister. What's the picture there? Relationship, family, oneness, a part of the same thing, no difference. Treating other people like they are a part of you. Not seeing the difference, the intense love that we have for family, mothers to their children that are carrying in their womb, to the love that the father has to his children, that the love that the siblings have with one another. It's family love. And that's the love that drives mercy. And then you have Jesus' words. So this is where Jesus is speaking out of, okay? And then Jesus' word says, Luke chapter 6, verse 36. Be merciful as your heavenly Father is merciful. What do you think he's talking about there? What kind of mercy do you think he's talking about here? The love that a father, that a mother, that a family has. That perfect love for one another. Yeah, you do that to somebody you don't even know. That's a challenge. But when we do this, Jesus says, be perfect as your Father is, right? Be merciful as your Father is merciful. In other words, reflect the purest form of mercy. Reflect God. So with the proper vision, seeing people the way that God sees us will lead us to focusing on the right things when we think of other people. And that right there will drive the impact that we'll make on their lives. See, when we see people the way that God sees us, I think, honestly, the only thing that we'll be able to do is love and be merciful. That's what God calls us to do. Maybe we're not making the impact we need to make, or maybe we would expect to make, because we're not merciful. Maybe that's not the thing that starts us. That's not the first step. That's not what's going on the inside of us. That's how the Pharisees were. And Jesus butted heads with those guys. I don't want to butt heads with Jesus. So I think I'll opt out for mercy. No matter what. How about you? Father, we're thankful that you are merciful to us, even though we may not even understand what all that entails, what that really looks like, what that means. As we struggle with overcoming the obstacles that we have in our own lives and our own faith, living in the world around us, on this journey, being your disciple. Teach us, instruct us, guide us, challenge us. Put those things in our way to show us, to guide us, so that we ourselves, when found in the middle, in the thick of things, will display a mercy in such a way that reflects you, reflects your love, that lights a path that leads to your Son. May the power that's at work within us give us the strength and boldness to be merciful. It's in Jesus we pray.